right, so get ready because today we are going to dive deep into two absolute classics of dystopian literature, two books I'm sure a lot of you have read, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley and 1984 by, of course, George Orwell. And to help us really get into the nitty-gritty of how these societies work and what they mean when we compare them to each other, we've got our expert with us. So let's just jump right into it. If you had to give the elevator pitch of each book, what would it be?
Well, I think a good way to frame this is that both of these novels, they offer us really contrasting flavors of dystopia. Each one kind of taps into a different primal fear that we as humans have, and they do it in very unique ways. So Brave New World, written in 1932, that was Huxley's baby, and it really reflects this fear of what we desire. It's this idea that we could become so enamored by comfort, so seduced by manufactured happiness, that we end up embracing our own enslavement. And the really scary part is we might not even realize it's happening, you know?
Yeah.
And then you have Orwell's 1984, published in 1949, and this one embodies a different kind of terror, the terror of what we obey, you know? It's a world where truth is just completely crushed under the iron fist of surveillance and manipulation and just brute force.
Okay, so we've got a world seduced by pleasure on one hand and then just ruled by fear on the other. To really get how these societies tick, though, we've got to get into the specifics. Like Brave New World, this one paints this picture, this really unsettling picture of a society where it's really technology that reigns supreme. Even humanity itself is mass-produced.
Yeah, and Huxley's world building, it's chilling how detailed it is. He introduces us to this thing called the Bokanovsky process. And it's essentially a way to mass-produce human beings in labs. It's described almost like an assembly line, racks of test tubes, these large metal boxes, chemical treatments. It's a far cry from the natural miracle of birth, you know?
Yeah, it's like a factory of human beings. It's stripping away, like you said, that individuality right from the start. And it doesn't stop there either. You've got the children in Brave New World who are subjected to hypnopedia and all this conditioning. It's essentially like programming their desires and aversions before they can even think for themselves.
Exactly. And it's all geared towards eliminating anything that might disrupt their manufactured bliss. Remember that scene where they're conditioning infants to hate books and flowers?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that says it all right there. This engineered aversion to knowledge, nature, anything that encourages independent thought.
It's horrifying, and then you add in Soma on top of that, this seemingly magical drug that just smooths over any rough edges, any hint of discomfort or unhappiness. It's happiness in a pill, you know, like a quick fix for any existential dread that might bubble up.
Yeah.
I have to admit, sometimes when I'm stressed, I find myself, you know, reaching for my phone or wanting to just like zone out. Maybe not quite to that extreme, but...
Right. But that's just it, isn't it? That's the insidious nature of Huxley's dystopia. He's forcing us to confront how alluring that comfort, that escapism can be. But in this world, it comes at a steep price, the sacrifice of genuine human experience. I mean, even the world controller, Mustafa Mond, he argues that stability requires the suppression of strong emotions, of individual expression.
Yeah, so it's like they've engineered away any kind of, discomfort with the world. But in exchange, they've lost something really, really important. And 1984, that takes a much more, brutal approach, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like Brave New World, it seduces you, right? But 1984, that one dominates you. Orwell's world, it's built on this foundation of constant surveillance, and the telescreens, they're like the poster child for that. These devices, they're everywhere, always watching every citizen's every move.
Yeah.
Creates this atmosphere of just total paranoia, you know?
Yeah.
It's like Orwell wrote, nothing was your own except the few cubic centimeters inside your skull.
Wow.
Like, even your own thoughts aren't safe, not really.
It's like Big Brother's not just watching you, but he's like burrowed his way into your mind, you know? There's no space left for you to even think for yourself. And then you layer on top of that Newspeak, the party's whole attempt to control language itself, which just blows my mind. Like, by eliminating words, they really think they can eliminate the very concepts those words represent. Just like shrinking the world of thought down until rebellion is literally unthinkable.
And it's not just about, like, getting rid of words. It's about twisting the meaning, right? Like, the party slogan, war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength.
Yeah.
I mean, that perfectly illustrates how Newspeak warps reality. It forces people to accept these contradictions, to embrace doublethink as just like a way of life.
I don't know. The character of Syme always gets me, you know? The linguist who works on the Newspeak dictionary. He's terrifying, but also kind of fascinating because he's genuinely excited about destroying language.
Well, that's the thing about Syme, right? Like, his belief in the power of Newspeak, it's scary how real it is for him. He says, let me see if I can get this right. He says, Don't you see that the whole aim of newspeak is to narrow the range of thought? In the end, we shall make thought crime literally impossible because there will be no words in which to express it.
Oh, man. Yeah, he says that.
Chilling, right?
So chilling. It's like language itself is being weaponized, not just to control what we say, but what we're even capable of thinking, you know?
Exactly.
And of course, we can't forget about the elephant in the room, or should I say, the thought police in every room.
Always there.
It's that constant threat, right?
Mm.
Like they're the enforcers of conformity, making sure not only that you obey, but that you believe.
Yeah, it's not enough to just, act in line. They want you to actually believe it.
You can't even think the wrong thing without risking everything.
Like that kind of fear, that does something to a person. It eats away at you.
So we've got Brave New World with its seduction, right? This control through pleasure and engineering contentment. And then you've got 1984, just brutal control through surveillance and fear and linguistic manipulation. Both of them are completely chilling, but they get there in such different ways.
And that's what I find so fascinating. Yeah, they both highlight different vulnerabilities. Like Brave New World, it preys on our desire for comfort, for instant gratification, right?
Yeah, totally.
Whereas 1984, it exploits our fear, our susceptibility to propaganda.
And that's where I think it really starts to hit home. Because these aren't just abstract dystopias, you know? They offer this, really unsettling glimpse into what it means to be human, even today. We've got characters in both novels who are, actively struggling against the grain, trying to hold on to that little spark of individuality in the face of all this pressure to just conform.
Exactly. And that's where the real meat of the story is, you know. Mm-hmm. You see Bernard Marx in Brave New World, and he's kind of an outsider. He feels this deep sense of unease, this nagging feeling that something's not right, even though everyone around him is telling him this is the perfect world.
Yeah, he's searching for something more, something real.
And then you've got Winston Smith in 1984, driven by this desperate longing for truth and freedom in a world where those things are basically outlawed.
Yeah, and it's interesting how their rebellions kind of play out in these totally different worlds.
Totally, yeah.
Like Bernard, it's almost like his rebellion is more internal. You know, right. He's eaten up by this doubt, this feeling that something's off about this so-called utopia. Like when he's with Lenina, he's drawn to her, obviously, but there's this part of him that's also kind of put off by how shallow she is. Like she doesn't or can't get why he's so obsessed with finding something more, something deeper.
It's like he wants to shake her and be like, don't you see there's more to life than this?
Exactly.
But she's been conditioned to not even want that. And then you've got Winston, who's driven to this outward defiance, actively searching for other people who see how messed up the party is.
Yeah, he's looking for connection, for confirmation that he's not the only sane one left. And his thing with Julia, that's a huge act of rebellion in itself, right?
Oh, absolutely.
They create this whole secret world together, this bubble of humanity in this crushing, oppressive regime.
Their love is this little act of resistance.
Yeah.
You know, a testament to how strong that human connection can be, even when everything around you is trying to stamp it out.
But, and this is the really sad part, they both Bernard and Winston end up getting crushed by the very systems they're fighting against.
Yeah.
It's kind of heartbreaking.
It is.
Bernard, he eventually caves, right?
Yeah.
Gives into that allure of comfort and just goes with the flow, chooses the easy path over the fight for individuality.
He just gives up, essentially.
And Winston, poor Winston, he fights so hard for truth and freedom, but the party just breaks him.
It's like they had to break him.
Their defeats, they're not just about individual failure.
Right, they're not.
They show just how insidious and powerful these systems are.
Yeah, they're like cautionary tales.
Yeah.
Brave New World shows how easily we can be lulled into complacency, how wanting an easy life can blind us to the fact that we're giving up our freedoms.
It's like the frog in the boiling pot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And 1984, that one shows us the pure terror of totalitarianism, a world where even thinking differently is a crime, and it's ruthlessly punished.
So, I mean, where does that leave us? These books, they paint such bleak pictures of what the future could be like.
I know, right?
Are they warnings? Are they predictions? Or are they something else entirely?
I think they're warnings, definitely. Like a giant beware of dog sign, you know?
Okay, I like that.
They remind us what could happen if we're not careful, if we don't pay attention to how power is being used, how easily we can be manipulated. Both Huxley and Orwell, they force us to confront those weaknesses we all have, the ways we can be controlled if we're not careful.
So it's not just about these societies, crazy as they are. It's about us, about being human in a world where tech and power are always trying to, grab the reins?
Absolutely.
And that's what makes these books so important to read, even though they were written, like almost a century ago now.
A century. I know, it's crazy, right?
Crazy.
But the questions they raise, they're timeless.
They really are.
Like, what does it mean to be truly human? What are we willing to sacrifice for comfort or for security? And what are we willing to fight for?
Those are the questions we have to keep asking ourselves. It's not just, could this happen? But what can we do to make sure it doesn't?
Exactly.
Wow. Well, you've given us a lot to think about today. From how these dystopias actually work to why these characters make the choices they do. And really just what it means to be human in a world that's constantly trying to pull our strings.
That's the beauty of great literature, right? It sparks these conversations, makes us think about the big stuff.
Absolutely. So to all of you listening, keep those questions alive. Keep exploring, keep asking the tough questions, and whatever you do, don't ever let anyone tell you what to think.
Hear, hear.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Brave New World in 1984. Until next time.